Thank you. Hello, everyone. And hello, Simon, as well. Okay, I would like to welcome those members of the public and press who are joining us today for this meeting of the Investment Committee. There are no fire drills scheduled for today, so if the alarm sounds, I will adjourn the meeting, follow the Democratic Services officers who can lead us to the assembly point. A reminder to those present that the public session of this meeting will be live streamed and a recording will be placed on the Combined Authorities website. Can I also ask everyone to turn their mobile phones to silent or vibrate whilst the meeting is taking place. So the first item on the agenda are apologies for absence. Would our governance manager let us know of any?
Thank you, Mayor. We have received apologies from Councillor Sharp for this afternoon.
Substitute today for East Cams. All right, fine. Okay. Thank you. Moving on. This is the section where people can make a declaration of interest. Does any member wish to declare disclosable pecuniary interest or non-statutory disclosable interest in any items being considered today? As always, declarations of interest can be made at any point during the meeting. Moving on to item 3 is the minutes and action log. These are the minutes from the committee on the 29th of August. And it's a question, is the committee happy to approve them as an accurate record and to note the action log? Okay, I see no objections, so we will take the minutes as approved and the action log as noted. So, moving swiftly on, we can get to item 4, which is possibly why we're really here. It's the investment concept papers. Jim Cunningham, and you can give your own job title nowadays, Jim, but you are here to introduce this item. Over to you, Jim.
Good. Thank you, Mayor. I'm an interim assistant director at the Combined Authority, covering responsibilities in the economy and growth team, and more recently in the place and connectivity team. And there are three, in line with the SAF process, there are 3 concept papers which have been produced, which I'll speak to in a second, and these will be passed from today to the Combined Authority Board on the 13th of November. I did notice that there's a typo in the one aspect of the paper that refers to the October board. The first concept paper is for a project called Extending Retrofitting Your Home. And this is a project which builds upon, or a proposed concept that builds upon work undertaken by Cambridge City Council to try and gather information on what were the best and most effective measures for retrofitting depending on the type of the house, and gathering that information so it could be made available to local residents to help inform their decisions about retrofitting their homes. And the proposal is to provide funding to expand that guidance beyond the work that's been done in Cambridge to cover other housing types, so that we come up with a series of housing types for the Combined Authority area, and which then can be used to provide guidance to to homeowners and others who are to improve the energy efficiency of their homes. And the ask is for 60,000 of revenue. The ask of the board or the committee today is to allow us to move forward to the preparation of a business case eventually on this. But the concept papers need to be approved by the board before we can then produce the more detailed business concepts. So the work is going on behind the scenes to get us to that position. But I would recommend that that you endorse the proposal to take the concept paper forward to the board and also to move forward with the development of the business case. Happy to take any questions on that at the moment.
Do it this way, so one concept at a time. Any questions for extending retrofitting your home? First question from Al.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'm conscious on a few of these I might come across as being more grumpy than constructive, but my first instinct when looking at this was £60,000 to update guidance that served as part of a Cambridge programme. So one questions what extent there is change that requires, in effect, a whole person for a year's time to actually reflect and modify that guidance. And so in terms of the start of this agenda item for the Investment Committee has ticks against all items, including best value and high performance. I'm just unsure quite how that's good value for money, given there hasn't been substantive changes in how you would retrofit your home from last year that I'm aware of.
Jim, do you want me to come in there?
Yes, but also for some reason I'm not hearing the mayor. I heard Al, but I'm not hearing the mayor.
Because I didn't have it. Sorry, Judith, you are welcome to come in, and I appreciate, you know, as the officers bringing these papers to the committee, I just wonder going forward when we have these things, particularly if they are going to be shared with constituent authorities, sometimes it may well be that the constituent authority might be also people who we would want to question at the same time, but that's for another thought process. Over to you, Judith.
Yes, very, very briefly, and you're raising the same question that I have raised during this process. And essentially the answer is that this original piece of work was designed for a Cambridge City archetype, and it is now being developed for a much broader area, including the whole of the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough area. And there are clearly a number of housing structures and archetype designs that are not currently there. So the money that is not currently within the existing kind of guidance. So therefore the work that is being done is to do that analysis of those different housing types, then put forward how you would best retrofit those properties, and then put that into the guidance. So it's to extend the number of archetypes, do the research of those archetypes and what you would do to retrofit them that is costing the money and the time.
I guess the question is that what are the different types of houses now? But come in, Al, do you want to come back on that?
Thank you. And thank you for the summary. And bear in mind, I'm providing constructive challenge because I think that's important. Are we suggesting that currently there is no guidance for how to retrofit insulation in your home available for different home types anywhere in the country? Or do we have to undertake unique research in the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough area to find that guidance?
Over to you, Judith.
I'm not close enough to the individual project to be able to answer those questions, but certainly the indication is that the indication that I have had in response to my questions has been that the more sort of specific to your house type the guidance is, then the more useful that is in terms of being able to provide householders with that information that they actually take on board. Now, clearly there is a question and absolutely can take that away. But one of the reasons this piece of work is considered to be important is because planners and other parts of other councils have been approached consistently about projects that kind of aren't necessarily the right thing, and it isn't necessarily the right thing for that house type. And it's about sort of having a guide that people can kind of recognise their own house type and then might make the right decisions. But absolutely, I will take away to ask the question about what else can be used and is it being used in order to reduce the cost of this project.
More questions incoming here. Nitin, and then it'll be Sam, John, and then Simon. So Nitin and Councillor Nawaz.
Can you hear me? Yeah, just a question. There's a lot going on in this area, and why wouldn't we just look at a system that's already out there, and a lot of them actually go on the basis of pay as you use, and the technology is much further on than 4 years ago. So at £60,000, I'm sure you could find other, and we could actually support some other businesses encouraging to move into this area, which is quite a positive area to do what you're talking about generally, but give access to other people as well, rather than modify something. And I think you'd find that there's quite a lot actually in the market that do this. So my challenge is, have we looked at what else there is available if this is the right path?
Chair,
Yes,
Mayor,
come in.
is it possible for me just to sort of ask a question of clarity about that question, if I may?
Yeah.
In terms of pay as you use, are you referring to sort of people perhaps having solar panels on their roofs and things like that? I just wanted to sort of clarify what model exactly you're suggesting there so that I can better answer your question.
You hear that,
Sorry.
Judith? Can you hear that?
No, I didn't hear.
Right,
I didn't
Nitin,
hear
you have
the
to
response,
join up.
sorry.
Hello?
Yeah, you're on.
Yeah, Judith, I'm more about using the software or the facility on a basis of using pay, which gives you an option to make sure that you get all the new stuff that comes along with the right company, rather than just buy something that's already spent some time modifying it, and then really, I'm not sure whether you know it does what you want to do in the time phase as well. So all I was asking is, have you searched the market to see if there's anything more suitable that actually meets the current criteria? Because I know there's a lot goes on in this area.
I will certainly ask the team if prepared the business case to make sure that they do that exercise and properly make sure we've double checked this hasn't already been done.
Okay, can I just sort of reiterate, this is, it's funny enough, it's actually the smallest figure we were discussing, but I do appreciate everybody's comments. We will make a note of them all, and well, obviously one of the things at the end of it, will need to be a summary of the challenges that we've made, and obviously with a view to officers bringing back this information. I'm getting an impression that this is not, well, there's a few challenges to this proposal at the moment. Sam, do you want to come in?
Thank you, Mayor. I think the point you've just made there around proportionality and sizes of bids, I think is relevant to us in what I think is still just our second meeting of this committee. And we talked last time around how I'm sure we'll work out how we can most effectively use the time here, because you're right, this is sort of a rounding error almost relative to some of the other figures in the paper, which does not mean it doesn't need proper scrutiny. It's just a question of what role this committee has around that. But it is, so I'm sure we'll iteratively work out how best to tackle that. On the specific as it is in front of us, I think, you know, looking at the piece of work Cambridge City have done, it's signposted quite clearly as having been prompted by feedback from public consultation on the City Council's climate strategy. To paraphrase what's in the full word, essentially, that they heard significant feedback from residents that they'd like to make improvements to reduce energy usage and carbon footprints of their homes, but were unsure where to start, didn't know which measures would suit their particular property, or didn't know which measures would be most effective. I have to say, I certainly recognise that from feedback from residents from similar exercises in Huntingdonshire. I think as one of, you know, there are lots of barriers here, but one of two main barriers. One is around finding the relevantly skilled tradespeople to do the work. The other is knowing what it is you want to be asking about or seeking quotes for. I think there is an awful lot of understanding about this, of course, and available online, but it is challenging to find the right independent, authoritative guidance that's relevant to you from sources that don't have commercial interests. So from my point of view, this proposal is absolutely meeting a real need that sounds enormously useful. Whether the most cost-effective way of achieving it is precisely as set out here, as opposed to spending similar amounts of money drawing from other sources rather than updating or expanding Cambridge City's work, I don't know, but would be happy to take reassurance from officers that they've looked at that before bringing it here. But on the specific question around house types, looking at the 7 types that are most common in Cambridge City, I don't recognise all of those as encompassing the range of what we've got in significantly rural hunts. I suspect a colleague in Fenland might say similar. So if we can efficiently build on what Cambridge City have done, I think that would feel enormously useful. Whether it should have to be CPCA doing it rather than national government, given policy directions in recent years, is a whole other debate, but we are where we are, to coin a phrase. So I'd be quite happy with this one, but I do hear concerns around the table.
Thank you. This is what we're here for. John, Councillor Williams.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I wondered whether a call to the Cambridge Shared Planning Service actually would provide all this information. I mean, I can't help but think that there are probably lots of organisations out there, including the government website, which will give you all this information. And I'm sure that, yes, we probably need to pull it all together, as Councillor Wakeford has said, but why would it cost £60,000? You know, which is basically employing a good officer post for a year to do this work. It just seems to me to be terribly expensive for someone to pull together all this information, which is probably already out there in one place anyway, if you go out to the government website. I don't understand why Cambridge City are doing it on their own, because as I say, the Shared Cambridge Planning Service already provides a service like this. And it's certainly a case in South Cambs that we refer people to the Shared Planning Service to give them advice on you know, for example, improving improving insulation in for example thatched houses, which we have a lot of in South Cambs. But yeah, it'd be great to have it all in one place. But I have a sneaking suspicion, I don't, you know, not that maybe it is already in one place. But certainly £60,000 to do that piece of work is really a bit over the top.
Thank you. Councillor Noaz.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Yeah? Okay. My comment kind of overlaps the preceding questions and comments. I mean, £60,000 to, in my experience, to reinvent the wheel, in the sense it says here, understand the types of measures and indicate costs to retrofit their property to improve energy efficiency and reduce energy bills. This has been going on for years, possibly a decade or more. And I would go a little bit further and say that this and the next paper, which is the domestic energy efficiency and low carbon heating, 0.95 million, they are surely part of the same continuum. So part of the same spectrum. Why split it into two? Why not merge into one and save on the costs of admin support, apart from anything else? So I honestly don't really see the need to split these two. I'm not too sure about the first one in any case, because that's something that's a well-trodden path. So why try to fork out the same path again? Thank you.
Councillor Smith, you indicated before, and you are the council that is currently holding the hands and encouraging local residents to consider retrofitting their home. Very keen to hear from yourself the experience Cambridge City has had.
Well, in my experience, Cambridge City Council officers aren't idiots. They're experts, and they actually lead the HUGS partnership on behalf of all the district councils. So we have some very highly qualified, experienced officers, and they identified the need to do this. And this is borne out on the doorstep when we meet people who are interested in retrofitting their homes, but they don't actually know where to start. If you look at the government...
It's okay, I'm just looking at beyond you, looking at Nick. Please continue. Sorry to put you off.
If you look at the government websites, they're extremely generic, and it's very, very difficult to make sense about how you would go about the complex, multidimensional tasks that you have to go through to retrofit your home. And the market is not trusted because suppliers just want to sell their particular product. They may make unevidenced claims about the energy saving, and therefore the public are actually asking for independent and objective advice that can be trusted as to how to go about retrofitting your home on a step-by-step basis, and to make sure that you don't do anything that actually prejudices later improvements. The guide is extremely comprehensive, it's quite complex, and actually it's possibly too complex because it's basically most accessible to buildings surveyors and advisors and architects and so on, but who people are employing to advise them when they're refurbishing their homes. We've refurbished our house, and I wish I'd had this before we started, because I think we would have made a slightly better job of it, and it might have been a more economical approach to do. So it costs 60,000 to do the city work, but there are more building archetypes to be assessed, as Sam indicated, and it's a really good idea to have this for the whole of the Combined Authority area. The distinction between the HUGS programme is that those works will be carried out and they're grant funded, and there's suppliers in place who will do work to a specification provided by the HUGS team. But this is actually trying to support the demand side. And there's demand side failure because people don't know how to go about it, who to trust, how much it costs, how effective it will be. This is a solution to triggering the able to pay, not the unable to pay. So they're two very distinct marketplaces. And what I found attractive about this whole agenda actually today is that there are projects within this that are actually supporting the supply side, which is the interim HUGS funding, to make sure that suppliers in the marketplace are encouraged by continuation of funding and the ability for them to have a marketplace to meet. And these initiatives, which are going to make the demand side, the able to pay side, much more confident about going into the market and getting this work done. We have to address retrofit in the existing housing stock. And we're seeing that because all the roads are now crumbling because of climate change. So we have to deal with this. And it's going to be value for money ultimately. So I really recommend it. Thank you.
Thank you, I do appreciate that. Judith, you've indicated your hand as to go up. Do you want to come back?
You're on mute, Judith.
Sorry, very briefly, Chair. I just wanted to add that obviously we're very happy to explore if there is anything that already exists that allows us to reduce cost in any way. But I think, and apologies, obviously I can't see the room quite correctly, but I think the last speaker from Cambridge City did touch on a number of things I was going to say. This absolutely is targeted at a different market, the able to pay market, and ensuring that people are well informed before they pay for anything. In speaking with the Net Zero Hub staff, who obviously are a different part of CPCA but work across this agenda, there's a considerable amount of investment by people who are able to pay in the things that don't necessarily make the right sense or in the right order. So, for instance, before you put in a heat pump, you need to have made sure that you've insulated your house to the right standard in order to get the best value from the heat pump. But people aren't necessarily advised of that. So it is about getting this information into the public domain to inform people so that they can make the right decisions with their contractors, with any planning requests that they need to make. And it is actually aimed at reducing the burden on planning services by providing that individual information to householders, and really based on what's happened in Cambridge City, extending the number of architects so more people across Cambridge and Peterborough can take advantage of that. The other point I just wanted to make is retrofit was the biggest single item for action that came out of the Climate Action Plan for 24-25. So the reason you're seeing a number of items in this area at this investment committee is because we have prioritised bringing these projects ahead, and this was one of those that would enable a large number of people across Cambridgeshire and Peterborough to be better informed and therefore retrofit homes at their own expense. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I found that very helpful. I just want to make one kind of additional request, which may be able to provide when you bring this to board. I know the reasons why people would retrofit are multifactorial, but is there any suggestion it's because of challenges of getting the information, and is there differences in the amount of retrofit going on around the county? So in other words, is retrofit going on at pace in Cambridge City but isn't happening in other areas? As I say, that might be multifactorial, but do we have any feeling of the figures for that? I'm not asking for the figures now, I just would like to know that as part of the report coming to board. Thank you, thumbs up. So that was the first one for 60,000. We're now moving on to another proposal for significantly more. So more conversation, please, everyone. Back over to you, Jim.
Okay, thank you, Mayor, and thank you everyone for the constructive feedback there on the previous item. This is a project which has been developed to address the impact of climate on the roads network, particularly in the Fens area, and the nature of the road surfacing in the Fens area is that it's built on peat and other soils, and Cambridgeshire County Council have been working to try and address road repair issues in that area for some time now, and are now looking to work with ourselves and others to address whether or not there are more feasible solutions that give a long-term solution rather than the perennial resurfacing of the road. So the project is entirely to do with the state of the subsoils in the Fens area, and particularly with flooding and then drying, the impact that has on the road surface. So what we're looking to do through this project is work collectively across Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, using the Fens as the example, but also moving out and potentially into neighbouring authority areas to look at what the most appropriate solutions are to address this. And the proposal is that a number of solutions are tested on the road network in the area with a view to coming up with a solution that is a more permanent solution moving forward. And the funding is being asked to take that forward over the next 2 to 3 years, and the end result will be we hope will be a more effective way of addressing road repairs in the area, particularly in the Fens.
Thank you, Jim. Interesting one, this one. Who wants to ask questions? First one is Al.
Thank you, Chair. This is obviously a slightly larger amount. Conceptually, we need to improve the roads across the Fen area, so I support the concept. My question, without trying to be too tongue-in-cheek, is do we need to figure out what the right kind of road technology is across this kind of soil composition, Or has there not already been work done, given there are large swathes of Scotland, Lancashire and other parts of the country that have similar? It seems, in order to be reassured it's good value, the question is, has nobody else yet figured what the best composition for a road is in the context of this land?
Well then, Jim or Judith, who wants to take that one? No previous experience and people asking this very same question. Is that the case?
Well, certainly it is my understanding, Mayor, that Cambridgeshire County Council have done a lot of research in order to conclude that this project about how to address these issues and what sort of road type we should be trying it is the way forward for this particular, certainly for this particular piece of work. And I know from having attended meetings over a wider geography that colleagues in Lincolnshire and certainly in West Norfolk and Norfolk County Council more widely are very interested in the results of this work. So I certainly, the evidence in front of me, Mayor, is that colleagues around the area are interested in the outcome of this work. Clearly, we can go away and ask if from other parts of the country there are some examples that can be drawn upon. But my understanding is that the technical officers have done that work and concluded that this is a proposition that would be helpful to the area and indeed other counties neighbouring.
There's no problem in, being the leaders in this technology. That we should be encouraged, particularly so we can take on some of the challenges that I think we would all acknowledge for the Fenland roads. But I can see representation from County Council. Councillor Singer is going to come in. Lucy.
Thank you. So just to echo and support what Judith has just said, the County Council have been looking at this problem really quite carefully for a number of years. I think it's important to say that this is an issue that has become much more, the Fen roads have been a problem for a while, but they are significantly more of a problem because of the issues of climate change, which are only going to get worse. So people have been obviously building roads on the Fens for some time. They've always been a little bit unstable, but the much hotter summers and the much wetter winters and the scale of different kinds of extreme weather that we're getting are making the impact of subsidence on those roads much worse than was the case in the past. And the usual solution of simply resurfacing them doesn't really do any good if the bank that the road is built on is subsiding every year. So it's that issue that we're trying to deal with, and I don't think that has been. I don't think enough work has been done on that by other people to say that this wouldn't be useful. I think it is very much sort of looking at what new technology we are looking for. Climate is one of the issues. I think it's also important to be clear that actually the roads are being used by very different vehicles from the ones which they were built for. So there are a whole range of issues that mean that they're in a bad state. Thank you.
That's really helpful, Lucy. Back to you, Al.
Thank you, Chair. I want to stress that I support improvements in the roads across the Fen region. I think part of my challenge, which is what it's meant to be constructively, is one, have we looked elsewhere? And by the sounds of it, yes, we may be the leaders in looking at the latest technology. And then I suppose the second is, given the costs for this trial, if we found the correct mixture, would it be viable to deploy across the region that we're looking at?
Do you want to come back on that, Lucy? I'm assuming that's part of the idea.
I can try. I think that one of the costs of a trial is that you try a whole range of different things and then you have to assess them, and doing that in itself, because it's new technology, it's always more expensive to do something the first time. It's probably sensible to try a number of things the first time and then work out which ones we can afford and which ones we can't. Realistically, fixing the Fen roads is not currently affordable, but it would nevertheless be quite work. It would be, even if at the moment we don't even know what we should be trying to do, let alone how we afford it. It would be helpful to have some ideas about what was more successful or less successful in terms of the new technologies that are being discussed. So, it would be a really, really useful project, even though it doesn't fix the funding problem in the long term.
As the representative for Fenland, Councillor Nawaz. Yeah.
Thank you.
Just put your, thank you.
Yeah. thank you. When we say the Fens, I assume that to mean the Fenland. And
I don't know if that's, don't put that on public record because you're going to have a whole lot of other people coming after you on that one.
although I am, I guess, painfully aware that it casts itself much wider than the district of Fenland. I say painfully because I'd love to have 60 houses done within the Fenland district. That would be great, wouldn't it? But no, I mean, as far as the principle goes, I'm fully supportive of this. But I think as for these, the costs of these and installation of, I mean, what are the energy efficiency measures? You got the installation of insulation, external wall, internal wall insulation.
We're talking about the roads. We're talking on the roads issue at the moment.
Oh, you've gone onto the roads?
No, we've just had 5-10 minutes of roads.
Yeah, okay. On the roads, I had a look at those diagrams. They look pretty promising, shall we say, and having experienced those roads and those undulating roads and big potholes and so on, that is very welcome. But my only reservation is the sample, as it were, we call it sample, but I guess in this case it's the length of the road. Is there going to be long enough, the sample large enough to be representative of the true nature of the soils throughout?
It's a good question. I mean, I guess it's a balance of the bigger project you do and the more different road types you take, it might cost more. So, Judith, the balance of cost versus opportunities to try out different structures. Do you want to come back on that?
As you can see, there's one of 3 routes that are to be chosen, and obviously technical colleagues are looking at the which is the best technical location and length of road to undertake in order to learn the most. As far as I'm aware, unless Jim's going to correct me, I'm not aware that there has been a decision on which of the 3 sites would be used at this stage, but it is absolutely based on learning the most in order to be able to conclude which is the best method for those road types and soil types, and indeed, as Councillor Netzinger said, to have a better understanding of what the costs are if that process had to be rolled out or could be rolled out over a wider area.
Yes, so come back, Councillor.
I beg your pardon.
Yeah.
So with that in view, are we allowing sufficient budgetary resources in case it has to be extended to, say, beyond 1 kilometre? I mean, I would still suggest that possibly, if at all possible, to make this longer rather than shorter. But I guess it comes down to the resources.
I think sort of Judith covered that off there. I mean, of course, if we were getting a lot of positive and we felt that it needed to be extended and there was a proposal to come forward for more funds, I guess it would maybe well come through this committee again as to, increasing costs. So, but the proposal is the one that's on the table, and I have to say I'm getting a general impression that it seems that it's a priority for this committee to see investment in the Fens, the Fenland area, which is obviously I would like to get behind. And I just, as chair, before I wrap on and move to the final proposal, I think for me, this is exactly what we've talked about through the shared ambition. The idea of a combined authority working with county council and working with the district council, particularly Fenland, and looking at a problem that is affecting all of its the constituents and saying, well, how can we work together? And on this, and noting the thing that the shared ambition was always about pioneering, if we're the pioneers and we demonstrate quite clearly that we have a way of dealing with the problem, and it's something that, first of all, we can then use the evidence that we get to make sure that we do get possibly enhanced funding because we have the challenge of having this and we've got the evidence, and then on top of that, dare I say it, also the expertise which could possibly be even monetised, you know, to other areas, be that Lincolnshire, Norfolk. Then you could. Well, I'm always the optimist, as you know. So I'm going to draw this one to a conclusion. Thank you again for all the input, particularly from, you know, different members there as to kind of where we are in clarification. I think that's seen as a big positive going forward in terms of the pioneering and shared ambition. So finally, Jim, to the I think this is the one you want to talk to, Councillor Ndawaz. This is the third proposal on the table. Do you want to come to that, Jim?
Okay, I think it was the councillor from Cambridge City Council, I think, put this in the previous project in context. This is now looking about how the opportunity for the combined authority to, you know, to demonstrate leadership and create fill a vacuum between government funding and announces of new rounds of government funding. And there is potentially up to a 6-month hiatus. But what we have in across Cambridgeshire and Peterborough is a supply chain that has been developed to respond to the needs of local residents when it comes to retrofitting and improving the energy efficiency of their houses, and particularly those in the lower incomes across the region. And this investment would help the service to continue while we await the outcome of any new government funding rounds, and keep the capacity, importantly, the industry capacity that is available locally to address this programme of activity. And what the next step would be, as I said earlier, to develop a more detailed business case based on, you know, feedback today. But the concept would go to the next board on the 8th of November. So to continue the activities that are currently government funded, but that funding is about to come to an end, and to keep that gap filled while any new government funding is announced.
Thank you, Jim. I'll put this out to the table. I mean, I think you've highlighted one of the problems that has come up, and where we've tried to develop this pipeline of opportunities. Sometimes companies have been slow to come forward simply because of a fear that funding gets turned off and on. And my initial reading of this paper was a very positive one, but I'm the chair. I'm opening it to everybody else. Simon, you were name checked before. Do you want to come in again?
There's clearly a forthcoming hiatus in HUG funding. It has actually been a very difficult programme to deliver because there are so many qualifying criteria to make particular homes eligible. And I think that's something government needs to address if we're going to get serious about rolling this out. And as I said before, the supply side is in its infancy, and it doesn't need a setback like this, or else it'll be back to square one and trying to rebuild it. So when I saw this, I thought, well, this is a fantastic thing for the CPCA to be doing, is filling the gaps and making sure there's continuity, and supporting, as you say, the whole of the combined authority area. And I think it's particularly poignant now, isn't it? Because this is actually addressing fuel poverty. And this is actually helping the poorest people in our community who will not be able to afford fuel over the winter. And therefore, this has quadruple dividends in the sense that we're reducing carbon, we're addressing fuel poverty, we're addressing health issues that are associated with that, damp condensation, mould, and we're also just making life a lot better for people. It's a great investment.
Okay, thank you. Judith, I will come to you after Councillor Nawaz. Councillor Nawaz.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, as I said earlier, in principle, I think it's a very good idea, and I believe the government had 2 attempts at green home grants, which I know is not quite the same as this. The first one failed, probably because, or it didn't do too well because it was administered centrally. The second one went through the local authorities, and I think that was much more successful. And part of the reason for it not being as successful as it could or should have been is the criteria used to determine which houses are eligible and which ones are not. And I agree, it is to be targeted at those with the lowest income, but that's where I think part of the problem lies. It's those on some sort of benefits whose total income may exceed the income of those who are not on benefits but are working, however, living in similar kind of accommodation. That's one part of the reason. The idea, I suppose, is to eventually get all of the homes in the UK to net zero carbon, which is an admirable ambition. But I think the devil lies in its implementation, how it is implemented. And in this one, you know, it's about 60 homes, which works out approximately, what, £15,000 per home, £950,000. And there are standard installations, which is the installation, whether it's external or internal installation, the heat pumps, and the new boilers and so on. So the cost seems to fit the 60 homes. But again, I'm going to go back to the initial question, that £60,000, is that really best spent money, or could that be combined with this and perhaps do a few more homes? Secondly and finally, it says all over the area. What does all over the area mean? Does that mean if we got, is it 7 districts we have, Chair, in Cambridgeshire? Is it 7 or 8? 6? No, 7. How many MPs? How many MPs do you have in Cambridgeshire? 8. So it's going to be 8 then.
No, it's not. It's South Country.
5 districts.
Yeah. The county covers 6 districts. Yeah. Sorry, go back to the question.
Well,
we all know why we're here.
sorry to put you all on the spot, but I mean, 60 divided by 6, it's easier to work out, isn't it, than, for, I guess, 10 or 12 per district. Is that going to be, you know, are we going to look to distribute all of this throughout the districts evenly, or are we going to say, well, 10 here, 5 there, and 2 there, and 20 there? How is it going to work out in practice?
Say this is a project which has been fraught with difficulties. I'm grateful that you acknowledge that once it moved down from the previous central government control to a more local authority level, things have improved, and certainly as an organisation, the Greater Net Zero Energy Hub, as run by the team, which we kind of hold and deliver, has been highlighted as one of the teams that's made big steps forward in trying to deliver a programme that by its actual design has always been difficult to come to any sort of meaningful, you know, spend the money basically. Judith, do you want to add anything to that? I mean, I can see the question, because it gives a specific figure, and then you're saying, well, where's it going to be distributed? But I don't think it's going to be that simple that we can, I think it's, but that's why we've got an officer here.
I can perhaps try and respond to the questions that have been raised, Chair.
Okay.
So in terms of the, you know, the applicants, obviously, because of the existing HUG2 schemes, there are properties that are in the pipeline. There's been a lot of marketing across Peterborough and Cambridgeshire for this scheme. So there are properties that are in the pipeline, but are unlikely to be completed before the HUG2 scheme ceases. So that gives us a pipeline of properties that, instead of just being put out of the way and actually not addressed, they can be brought forward in these 60. So I don't know where those 60 are, but they will be across Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. And there's a separate delivery mechanism in Peterborough to that it is in Cambridgeshire. Obviously, what we need to be mindful of, as was spoken about earlier, is this HUG2 scheme is a different audience to the archetype guide, because that is aimed at the people who can pay. This Hug 2 is aimed at people with an income of less than 36k. So it isn't only for benefit for people who are receiving benefits, it's also for people on lower incomes. So I think all of that is important to say. In terms of the things that it pays for, it does pay for, as you say, there's issues around cavity wall, there's issues about the solid wall, as well as heat pumps and boilers. But obviously there is a cap on spend. So if you have to have the insulation before it makes sense to have the heat pump. So they do have to look at the package as a whole before they make the investment. The last thing I wanted to say, which I think is important, is that we've referenced this scheme with a view to being a kind of enabling us to keep the supply chain and the kind of delivery chain going during the interim whilst the government announced a new scheme. The government have recently announced that new scheme, the Warmer Homes Grant. We're looking at the details of that, as our colleagues at Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. So one of the things we need to make sure is we are taking account of what that means for this scheme, and also are looking at the opportunities of whether it is then appropriate to apply for that scheme. So I just wanted to make sure the committee were fully cited on that detail.
Just wanted to come back on something. You're not on yet. You are now.
Yeah. No, I can see it. Yeah, just a couple of suggestions. One is that when we say the criteria used for this, I know you say it is the income, which is 36,000, but I think in the previous two government schemes, it also stipulated that you have to be on one of the statutory benefits. I think that should be taken out. It should be replaced by the total income to go more on financial merit. Secondly, if I may submit this, Chair, I think if we target the most deprived areas, rather than random geographical areas, it may be of greater benefit to the community, and we may learn more about this for the future, much more substantial project to come along. And if I may suggest, I think, as far as I'm aware, and I'd be open to any other suggestions, the most deprived areas within Cambridgeshire would be Peterborough North and Fenland. Perhaps you can laugh if you wish, but I think merit would probably indicate that perhaps we should target those two areas. I have no issues if somebody can justify another equally deserving area. Thank you very much.
I don't know if other authority members want to play the game of our areas more deprived than others, but I mean, one of the things that we try and do at the combined authority is acknowledge that there are, at a granular level, there are needs across the whole of the region, and it's an interesting thing, and I would absolutely recommend we did the State of the Region piece, which is there to help all authorities, begin to realise what are the challenges that we have in terms of inequality across all of the regions and across the region as a whole. So I'm not going to come back on, because I think we would want to target the areas that have the most need, but it's not for me to be specific or prescriptive in that. I would be reliant on the officers, knowing that as a board, I'm sure we would want to go to the places where it is the most effective, and indeed where people have invited it. Sorry, I'm going to let you come in, Al, because you're next.
Thank you, Chair. I support this. I think in terms of a broader aspirations, it's really important. The only thing is, I read it from a business perspective, which I appreciate it's not its target, but the business perspective was this is actually an investment to maintain a supply chain. Yeah. That's fundamentally it. The number of houses at the end of it is trivial. The bit that reassured me was Judith's comment about the Warmer Home Scheme, and obviously this would have to be based on the fact that at the point that committing this, you knew that the Warmer Home Scheme would allow us to continue with the same supply chain to make it viable. But the impact of losing a supply chain and then rebuilding it from the lessons learned over the last few years previously would be far greater than the cost here. So there's definitely some common sense in there, yeah.
Sam, you wanted to come in, and then I think, Simon, you want to come back. Sam.
Thank you. My head is where Al's is at on this. I think, and as I imagine he takes as implicit, but it might be worth spelling out, it's not merely around supporting the supply chain for our own self-interest in terms of enabling us to more easily have access to companies that haven't followed the boom and bust process that the paper talks about with previous government schemes. It's also around the maximisation of our area as a good place to build and develop green industries, businesses in that space, in terms of the jobs available as well. We've obviously got, as the Mayor and I were at in my district, the East Anglia Energy Academy opened not very many months ago, seeking to help contribute to that supply chain. But it's a jobs and economic development point, I think, for us and the industries we're trying to support, as well as more narrowly ensuring that we've got sort of follow-on opportunities. So while, like Councillor Nawaz, in other contexts, not least in the skills one, as some of us were in this room only a few hours ago talking about, the Combined Authority has previously managed to commission work that has ended up being delivered in ways that are easiest to deliver it as opposed to more equitably on whatever basis around the Combined Authority area. I've been as vocal as anyone in trying to support the direction of travel towards greater care with how money's moved around. But I think in this particular case, we're not reinventing the wheel, we're not even building a new wheel, we're just keeping the wheel spinning a bit between government gaps. So I think in this particular case, I'm not concerned about trying to micromanage where around the CPC area things go, because it's just carrying on what's in process. So I'm very happy with this. I'm happy to second it in due course, Chair, if that's helpful to you, conscious we've got more on the agenda.
Councillor Fulbourn, I just wondered, do you want to come in on any of this at the moment, or are you just happily listening in? Good. Just want to say, just because you're down the end doesn't mean to say that you've been forgotten about. Councillor Smith, maybe.
Thank you, Chair. There is a geographical dimension to this because one of the criteria is taking people off oil. So it's very heavily weighted towards more isolated rural areas, and I do know that I don't think we've ever had one in Cambridge. So there you are. But I also think it's actually just timely to just sort of have a check back for a moment on our culture and our cultural norms, because when we come to this combined authority, yes, we are here because we represent particular interests and particular local authorities. But we're here to act on behalf of the whole combined authority area. And in previous administrations, this combined authority, that was not to the fore. And we've been through a process of governance review and reform. And it's very important that we just remind ourselves, we're here to serve the whole combined authority area, regardless of our own specific geographical representation. And in so doing, we grow the pie. We build the authority, we strengthen it, and we make ourselves more investable by government. And as a result, more money comes into our area than would otherwise do if we were fighting like in a sack over who gets what. So it's a zero-sum game. We build the pie, and we all benefit, but we do that by working together collaboratively and not fighting over the slices. Thank you.
I think that's probably the best point to finish, because I can't see anybody else indicating a need to speak. First of all, look, I just want to say thank you to the officers on this, Jim, Judith, in terms of making the points of clarity and answering those questions. A real big thank you to all members there for the comments made. I'm sure they've all been noted and obviously will be put together as we take this forward to the next board meeting, and I will I think the last time we did this, we actually put the comments and everything into a report so that the board members, so again, representatives of all the different areas, could see what had been discussed and the clarifications that had been asked before. As I say, we've been asked to note and comment, which we have done at length, and I thank you. So we're going to now move on to item 5, which is, on this, I think, Judith, you are staying around, but is the outline business case for the climate bidding round. Judith, would you like to introduce this item?
I will do. Thank you, Chair. I will do so very briefly. Set as a bit of background, the Environment and Sustainable Communities Committee have been talking about and bringing forward proposals to implement the Climate Change Action Plan. And you'll be aware that in fact, the earlier projects, the Fens Roads and both of the retrofit projects are part of that portfolio of delivering the Climate Change Action Plan. Another strand of that Climate Change Action Plan is to bring forward a bidding round for not-for-profit organisations across Cambridgeshire and Peterborough to bring forward proposals for capital funding in order to deliver the Climate Change Action Plan. So there are within the paper a set of principles which you can see of the types of activity that would need to be brought forward and what they would need to demonstrate. And so we have taken that. We had it's previously sort of obviously clearly been spoken at investment panel with the refinement of all the colleagues across the organisation, including our finance team, our legal team, procurement team, etc. And we have now been working up the details of this in order to bring it forward. So you can see on page 2, we're talking about launching a bidding round that opens at the end of November. It would be closing in the middle of January. We would be attracting bids for capital spend that could then happen during 25-26. You can see that the size of bids, we're looking at between 50 and 150k, but larger amount of money would be available for those larger bids that are perhaps delivering even more of the principles that are set out in the paper. We're seeking a small amount of match funding, recognising that this fund is open to not-for-profit organisations. So that match might be tricky, but it was clear from our discussions that having, if I can use this phrase, skin in the game is important. So that requirement was set. And you can see the types of outcomes that we'll be looking at. Now, obviously, at this stage, we're looking at for your approval for the bidding round as a whole, not the individual projects. So at the moment, I can't say to you it will deliver a certain amount of carbon or a certain amount of water savings or anything like that. But I can say these are the types of things that we will be asking the projects to address. And we've given a list of kind of typical projects that might be brought forward for that capital money. So we are, that's the kind of proposal that's before you. You can see some of the success criteria and so on and the timing of the project. And obviously it will deliver the specifics of what it will deliver. The intention for that is if we close the bidding round in the middle of January, we'll then have the opportunity to independently appraise all of those bids and score them. And we can then bring that report with those scored bids about what actually delivers against the criteria in this report to the greatest extent. Those will be brought forward to you in what would then be a full business case, which could be presented to the investment panel in February and indeed this committee in March. So decisions can be made and then projects would have a 12-month period to deliver the project by March 2026. So hopefully that's a helpful overview for colleagues. And obviously with Jim, who's been supporting me in developing this, I'm very happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Well, any questions? That's good. We'll take quietness as assent and general agreement. This is the direction of travel we need to go on. All right, I think we can go to a vote then straight away. Thank you. I'm obviously very positive, and can I just check those timelines? You really think you can hold to them?
Well, clearly we need to. We're certainly on track to open the bidding round on the 25th of November. That's the sort of revised date that we're working to. There is a risk that we get inundated and the appraisal process takes longer. However, we are bringing in support to help us with that appraisal process. We've been told that those appraisals can be completed in 3 weeks with the report written, which should allow us to go to an investment panel in February and March. If we get inundated, and that might be a problem, however, that's what we're planning to do at the moment, and I will continue to keep this committee updated with that progress.
And to follow that up, I mean, obviously, in some ways, that's a nice problem to have if you're inundated,
Yes.
but it would be worse not to be have as many people as you would like to apply for it. And obviously, we have an example in the past where we tried to do retrofitting on care homes, and despite an inordinate amount of work, it didn't kind of hit the mark. So, in terms of making sure that this is, and I'm very conscious that on the 25th of November, that's in the run up to the Christmas period, and people may well be thinking about other things apart from these sorts of projects. Have you got the resource, and do you believe that we can put the message out there widely? Any plans about how we're going to do that?
Absolutely, Mayor, and that's been absolutely critical to the questioning that I've also received from Environment and Sustainable Communities Committee. So absolutely, we have lots, as you'll be aware as the chair of the Climate Partnership, we have lots of existing contact that we can put the messages out through. So we are working with the communications team to think about that. We are absolutely looking at how we use our website, developing our application forms and all of that information as well, so as it's accessible as possible. One of the things we're doing is working to help us develop the detail of this, is working with a consultancy who have worked on climate change community-based projects before, in terms of making sure that we're reaching out in the right way. And one of the things that we will be doing during that week of the 25th of November is holding online sessions to invite both our public sector colleagues and not-for-profit colleagues to sessions to help them. So we'll be briefing them about the opportunity, but also helping them see what good looks like, so that they're able to raise the quality of their applications. So there's going to be some sort of activity that's very much around marketing and making people aware of the opportunity, as well as support for them to understand what a good application would look like. And indeed, we're hoping to be able to offer them some individual support just to help with applications, so they make sure that they are of good quality. Now, we've kept the window open until, so from the 25th of November to the 17th of January, which we believe gives enough time over the, taking into account the Christmas period, to be able to address that. But certainly through conversations with the committee, members are aware of voluntary organisations that are already talking about this opportunity, and have been hoping that we'd be able to open it earlier in the process. So we're hopeful that we will have applications, and with robust sort of marketing and comms, then the applications will come forward. But clearly we will need to monitor, we will need to learn, and we may need to be flight of foot if if things go slightly differently to planned. But certainly we're going to learn and make sure that we sort of keep that under review.
Judith, right. We've been asked to approve the outline business case and 102,000 revenue for the bidding round and the development of the full business case. I will propose this recommendation. Do I have a seconder? Okay, Councillor Smith, thank you for that. We'll move to the vote. All those in favour? Is that unanimous? Yep, unanimous. Thank you all. Passed unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to item 6, which is the single assurance framework. And this is the Chief Executive Business Case Decisions, with Janice Gotts, our Executive Director for Resources, to introduce the item.
Thank you, Chair. There are 2 items on this paper today. The first one is the funding of 363,000 to support schools' low carbon heating. This is in support of 3 schools as part of the County Council's low carbon heating programme. 13 schools were identified. However, the funding was such that it wouldn't be able to fund all 13, but with the support of the Combined Authority, that's helped ensure the additional external resources come in to support that as part of a match fund as well, and that's enabled all 13 schools to go forward on the programme. And as I say, the contribution of 363,000 is towards a total project cost of just over 1.6 million. The second one is for support funding for biodiversity audits. That's £350,000. That's £50,000 per local authority within the region. And this will support biodiversity improvement plans being developed, and that will help with the delivery elements for the Combined Authorities Local Nature Recovery Strategy, which is due in 2025. As I say, it's £350,000 revenue in 24-25, and this will enable each local authority to undertake ecological surveys to allow stronger data to inform that planning and policy development. Thank you.
Thank you, Janice. Questions on that report? There are no questions. So thank you. Oh, yeah, please do, yeah. And, sorry.
I just wanted to say thank you for the schools programme. I think it's a really good programme, and it's really brilliant to have that happening in our schools. So thank you.
Thank you, Lucy. Al.
Thank you. What she said on the schools. Thank you. I absolutely agree. I was interested. I support biodiversity work, and I was thought that there was some work done quite recently on that across our region as part of some of the analysis. So my question was, is this replacing some data, updating it? Is it something we need to update on a regular basis? You found?
Yeah.
Judith, do you want to come in on that?
Yes, so I certainly can, Chair. So this particular project is to take forward a particular type of work that is required by our local authority partners as a result of the 2021 Environment Act. So there is a piece of work that is developing the evidence base for the Local Nature Recovery Strategy, which is a Cambridgeshire and Peterborough-wide document. That we're working closely with county and all constituent authorities to deliver by 2025. But this particular work is effectively grant funding £50,000 to each local authority to allow them to undertake ecological studies of publicly owned assets, so in their local authority area. So we obviously are granting to our local authorities the ability for them to make the decisions about which are the most important assets that they need to focus on, and indeed whether they prefer to look at that at parish level or whether they want to look at particular sites across their geography. And clearly different local authorities are taking different approaches. But that's what the funding's for, to allow them to take forward those responsibilities, get up and running, and hopefully, and that certainly the committee, ESC committee, were very keen to see this, encourage collaboration to spend that money, because clearly there might be savings around procuring ecologists and looking at how this can be done better so that we're all in a stronger position to focus on nature going forward.
Any other questions? Councillor Smith.
Just one question. Is this funding going to be conditional on the local authorities producing the delivery action plans?
Did you hear that question there? Okay, over to you then.
Yes, I did hear. What we've made in terms of the provision in the grant funding agreements for this £50,000, then yes, they will be producing action plans for their own areas to take that forward, and what we've asked that be then reported through our Environment and Sustainable Communities Committee, so that firstly we can see the outcome, and secondly we can kind of support that collaboration. Obviously, one of the things that we're aware of is sort of when this is going to happen, because obviously in terms of ecological surveys, that's most important in the spring. So the timing of the money is to make sure that our local authority colleagues can procure the support to be able to be active in the breeding season and then report sort of later next year. So what we hope we've done is enabled a full growing season to be part of the process in 2025.
Well, I'm pleased to hear we're taking into consideration the breeding season. Because but any other questions? Okay, Thank you very much. And now on this one, no, this is for noting. Asked to note the report, which we've done. No vote is required. We will, in that case, move on. Thank you, Judith and Jim again. So this now comes to item 7, which is the report on the Combined Authority subsidiary companies and equity interests, which, correct me if I'm wrong, Janice, this was not on the agenda the last time we did this committee.
Yeah, it was part of the forward plan. Oh, not on. It was part of the forward plan from the first meeting we had, because it recognises the wider role of the investment committee, not only around business case and investment, but also around shareholder interests. So this is a paper that picks up the shareholder and equity interests of the combined authority in order to baseline that position.
Which many of these were obviously in motion some considerable time ago, but again, you know, this goes back to the whole thing of reviewing governance and making sure there's proper oversight. So thank you for the clarification. I will then hand it over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this recognises, as I say, the other big part of the role of the investment committee, which is around the shareholder interest parts of the combined authority. So in relation to that, the committee has a responsibility to advise and make decisions in line with delegated authority on behalf of the Mayor and the combined authority in the exercise of the responsibilities for its functions as a corporate shareholder, and also provide the necessary oversight from a shareholder perspective that the parameters, policies and boundaries that the combined authority has established have been adhered to. And that includes regular review as well as monitoring the performance of subsidiary entities as well. So what this paper does as a first point of call is to set that baseline position for the combined authority, setting out the major shareholdings, the control that the combined authority may have in each of those areas, or indeed the latest position on some of those, because it is noted and it was last reported to board, for instance, at last board, about the Growth Hub and the fact that that was now winding up and becoming part of the combined authority. So it picks up the latest position that we have on each of those. It also picks up areas where it's not necessarily a subsidiary company, but we have investment or equity share interests in other funds, and those are listed within the report and sets out as well the fund that the board recently approved around FSE, which is £7.5 million investment fund that will take place and is going into operation, just sorting out the governance arrangements for that now, and that's set out in paragraph 3.18, as well as another fund that has recently been approved for ALIA to support a social investment fund panel there, as set out in 3.19, and that goes into the governance arrangements as well to support that. The appendices set out all the amounts that have been invested in the data, the investments and the respective shareholdings that we have in each of those areas, and as well the nature and status of those investments where we have a programme set out. What it also does, going into the final appendix, is set out some of the key monitoring data gathered on the listed investment projects. And that's part of this, is trying to understand as well the performance that to be reported back to the investment committee about those investments, and therefore what they're doing for the wider region around jobs, apprenticeship, and the other things about creating and sustaining new businesses. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, questions on this? And also just want to add, we've got Steve Clark here as the Senior Responsible Officer for the Local Growth Fund. Market Insight and Valuation is also here. So thank you, Steve, for coming to join us. Although at the moment there are... no, there are a couple of questions. Okay, over to you, Nick. Councillor Fulbourn, and then...
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mayor. My question's really around influence. On the IRU and the R&D companies, as well as others, it's become slightly apparent that the influence is how the influence works. I need to understand how that influence works. So, for instance, if IRU, for instance, as an example, doesn't like a proposal coming in, and the local authority and the combined authority do, What influence do we have to swing it in the favour of the local authority? I'll give you a practical example. I've got a guy in America who wants to spend millions and millions and millions, and ARU say it's not something we want to do. So,
all right.
See where I'm coming from? That's just
I might need you to speak to officers about that. Okay.
No, it's just an overall
influence.
How do you influence these things? What is going on around influence?
I do you want to come in, Janice? Or?
Steve can, but my main things will obviously be considered by the board as a proposal that will go through to the board, and then it will be considered as part of that, and then obviously it will, whatever the terms of reference are for the board and how decisions get made, and who puts that forward will be part of how it therefore gets approved.
Clarification, which board are we talking about?
Oh, sorry, the PropCo 1 and PropCo 2 boards
so
that govern.
That's the specific one about ARU?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, yeah, so yes, it will be done within that, but obviously to be reflective of our shareholder interest as well as that. But it'll be a proposal that will go through via the boards.
Yes, sir.
You've got 2 or 3 step process to get to a point of an agreement within the combined authority of a certain path you'd like to go down. The question I've got, I understand that, the question I've got is the relationship with ARU or any other of these organisations of influence. So how do you go from that point to actually influence them to do it? I could see you've got 2 out of 5 directors, so you could actually have 2 put the hand in the air. Is that the route? Is that how that's managed? I'm just interested in the practical day-to-day stuff. You know, 2-step process, everyone agrees with the combined authority. How do we convince ARU that they should change tack? Or anybody else on this list?
I wasn't actually going to answer the question. What I was going to venture is that Jim, who's been leading on the university work and has been sitting on those PropCo boards, might actually be able to sort of say a bit more about the mechanics of the board process.
Jim, I'm going to come to you, but I'm also minded that I don't want to go into anything that could be commercial sensitivities. So if you could use a narrative to the kind of that question from Councillor Thorburn, it would be appreciated.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would just endorse what Janice had said, that you know that each of the boards associated with the delivery of the ARU project. If ultimately the CPC is the majority shareholder on board, so if it came to that situation, then there would be the possibility of that being dealt with through that process. But I mean, I'm confident that it's an example that's well put forward, Councillor Thorburn, but it's not something that there has been any inkling that it would be. You know, from our dialogue with the ARU and our commitment to working with them jointly for the delivery of the project and the future delivery of the project, that it would ever become an issue. But I'm happy to have a chat offline with you on that, if that would be helpful.
It seems appropriate. I think I'll come to you. It's Nitin. Do we need to come in as business board, sir?
Just a quick question on the transport accelerator there, and it's just a bit of communication. The Greater Cambridge Partnership were talking about ticketing in their new system, and I wonder whether these guys are working on that as such, and if not, how you make sure people understand there's things going on, because they didn't seem to understand, and I think everything we're talking about transport, if we don't have a good ticketing system, it's going to struggle. So is that what the accelerator is looking at?
The accelerator has looked at ticketing. It's looking at a number of things. It's looking at so obviously this is based primarily on bus, which the accelerator is focused on. So there's a lot about the environment of the bus, obviously the systems that manage efficiencies of the bus, all that type of stuff. But they do have a ticketing project I'm aware of. So Greater Cambridge Partnership have been involved with this lab.
Okay. I'm just raising it to make sure that you don't miss the opportunity,
Yeah.
because as much as buses can be efficient, no one will use them if buy a
Yeah,
ticket
yeah.
that's continually
No, that's
linked.
and I'm
Tiger card.
no, I'm sure that's quite right. So yeah, but this particular accelerator has actually run its course and is actually one of those in this list that's actually proposing to be wound up at some point. Obviously, the invested interests in the company. I realised from the paper that the list of organisations that are invested in that accelerator are not here. It's an omission, so we'll circulate that. But in terms of wider transport technologies, it's an area we still need to keep focusing on.
Councillor Nawaz. Yeah.
Thank you. My question relates to the question about influence. Now, somewhere here it mentions that this committee is supposed to have representation on the boards. Does it? On the subsidiary companies?
Let's go to this is for Steve. Steve?
On the new schemes that are being set up, so the FSE scheme and the ALIA scheme, which are new, there are representatives that have been invited from this board. And I'm aware, is it Councillor Smith, I think, who's agreed to sit on the FSE, and and Councillor Nessinger, who's agreed to sit on the ALIA panel. On the older schemes, I can't talk to the propcos because we already have representatives that have been appointed. All the other joint venture schemes or managed funds, we have influence, well, we have representation from amongst the officer base, but I don't think we have political cover. But as I say, many of these are coming to an end. The managed funds, like Start Codon, are managed on our behalf. We actually only attend as one of 5 shareholders their annual meetings and their update meetings. It's not a board scenario.
Councillor Nawaz.
Yeah, thank you. Following on from that, I mean, those representations that are happening, how were the invitations issued and how were those decided upon? And secondly, just a general point, isn't it correct that wherever the public money goes, there should be democratic oversight?
I was asked and I made some suggestions and those people have accepted. I didn't put it out to a vote. I just made a decision. I thought, who would be interested in doing it? But raised the question, but I thought I would ask different people who I thought would be interested.
Entered into ping pong, but wouldn't it have been better for the sake of probity to have issued a general invitation to all, or perhaps flagged it up in one of the meetings?
On reflection, that would have been a way to do it, but I wanted to. I was being asked to, can you put any nominations forward? So I just put some forward. But I will take that as a observation. It is maybe something, if as a committee they want to revisit, I'm more than happy for that to be done. But oh, sorry, I'll come on. Rena's wanted to come in.
At the time this committee was set up, the terms of reference were not issued. Therefore, it's in the remit of the mayor to make that decision. Oh, sorry. With the committee, yes, for the funds. Yeah, the terms of reference for the relevant funds, as in Steve's just mentioned, the new schemes that have been set up, those were not agreed. Therefore, it is in the remit of the mayor to make those decisions in terms of
those specific ones.
with those.
But going forward, we can also,
we can do that going forward. But at the time, that's how the decisions were arrived at.
thank you for the reminder, because there was an element of, I think, I got an email saying, can we suggest names? And I went, yes, I'll do it. But I will take your point forward, and any groups going forward, I think I would absolutely agree, kind of goes out to a general sort of who's got the time, who's available, who's interested. How we would, if one of the things when you put these things out, you don't always get people who are willing to do it. But if you then had a situation where we had several people wanting to do the same role for different funds, I'm not quite sure how we would then go about, which then goes back. Do you want to, have we got an answer currently on the terms of it? Do you understand? So it was a case of necessity at the time, and I made a decision, a chair's decision, to appoint or ask and invite different people to come forward. I'm sorry I didn't ask you directly. If you were interested, I'll make that as an apology. But going forward and actually opening it up to the committee, is that the way that people would like to proceed? Because, you know, that's certainly something I would be happy to do in terms of as we have opportunities. Okay, I'm getting the most important person. I'm getting the right legal advice is that we'd have to double check how we would then opening it up to anybody putting themselves forward and how we would then make the final selection in a truly transparent way.
Thank you very much, Chair, with full respect. I just think we should practice what we preach in the context of a single assurance framework, the processes, procedures, practices, transparency, probity, and all that. Just draw your attention to that, and I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.
That's what I did. I've just listened to the team around me. I believe that we've done it, going forward, and we've got a plan going forward within the context of the terms of reference, and we'll obviously get the additional clarification. As I think we said at the last committee meeting, this is something that wasn't available before, and the point you actually made, you know, where is the representation? The fact was, in previous iterations of investments that were being made by the combined authority, there was no oversight. So I think moving forward, if it's a little bit stumbling to get it to the right place, and we're learning on the job, as I am always learning on a day-to-day basis, I would, I appreciate the support and evidence and suggestions from yourselves, but I'll also be drawn very clearly by the advice from the legal team. Thank you again. Over to you.
Can I just refer to section 315 of the report and it reference to the Illumina Accelerator? And I read that they've given notice that they're going to close the Accelerator programme and terminating the partnership agreement. What reassurance have we got for the support for the existing companies that have benefited from being in the Accelerator? Because obviously we've got substantial investment at stake there, and I'd hope that Illumina are going to honour their commitment and continue to support those businesses, but could you clarify the situation, please?
Obviously the decision to close the Accelerator on Grant Park is an Illumina corporate decision. The 15 investments that we've made under the partnership agreement, we agreed to invest 100k seed funding into candidates that go in the programme if they required it. It was optional, they didn't all take it. So the 15 investments that we've made, we continue to monitor. Our Growth Hub team continue to have regular contact with them in the aftermath of development. One or two are overseas. They came in for the Accelerator programme but didn't decide to stay. That was always an accepted part of the programme, but many have stayed and are in the Greater Cambridge area growing, have got secured more investment. We have pretty regular contact. We seek their annual accounts every year, and we seek their update pretty regularly as part of our monitoring to track how they're doing. 2 have liquidated, and I think it's 4 have converted the simple agreement for equity under which we invested to actual shares. But we will continue to monitor. And we're actually in dialogue with the Sanger Institute, who are the partner that Illumina have spoken to about setting up a very similar activity, which is a acceleration activity at the Wellcome Genome Campus. So we will continue through our life science sector champion to provide support and engage and support that programme.
Okay, with you, Councillor Smith. Are there any further comments?
You're still off. You're still off.
Yours is still on.
The question was kind of slightly different to the answer I got, which is, what support is Illumina giving to the companies that it's supported? Is it just going to throw them out the Granted Park, or cut off all their business support advice and so on and so forth? What's the continuity for these businesses?
You gave a politician's answer.
Yeah, you did, yeah.
Yeah, okay, fine. Okay, fine.
So, yes, no, Illumina are still a shareholder in these companies, like us. As part of going in the accelerator program, they actually took a bigger shareholding than we did, so they are tied to these companies. They've set up a wing of their organisation called Illumina Ventures, which now manages all of their investments, and they do much bigger stuff than this across the world. So, yes, they will continue as part of their business development and engagement to develop and work with these companies. Along the way, when we've had decisions to make about the conversion of these SAFE agreements, we've always liaised with the Illumina team, and we'll continue to do that as long as they'll continue to obviously engage once the partnership agreement is lapsed. But we have a very good relationship with them, so very key to our life science sector. So, but it's not going to end entirely.
Nitin.
Out of interest, why did they leave, Steve? Why did they decide not to? If it was successful, I wouldn't have thought they wanted to give it up. So are we going to change what we did?
Yeah, hard for me to comment exactly what the decision was. I understand that their accelerator in San Francisco has been far more successful, and it's been a longer standing activity than here. They gave over quite a bit of their floor space in their building in Grant Park to run this. So I don't know if there was a pressure consideration about that. I mean, I know, Mayor, you came to the opening and saw all that. It's a few years ago. Yeah, but it's a commercial decision in the end that they obviously want to do their venture work, their support to companies in a different way. And as I say, I think it's through partnership with others like the Sanger Institute.
Okay, thank you. An interesting run around some important questions there and some directions going forward. Thank you, Steve. I'm glad you were here for those clarification points. So this was a report to note, which we have done, and as no vote is required, we can therefore move on to, well, we sort of touched on this before, Jim. Item 8, which is a report outlining the changes to a shareholders' agreement between Propco 2 and Anglia Ruskin University. Jim, as our Assistant Director for Delivery, Economy and Growth, I know you're covering this area, will introduce the report.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah. As we've just discussed, CPCA is a shareholder in the 2 delivery vehicles that have been created to see the development and delivery of the Anglia Ruskin University Peterborough project. The paper today focuses on the second of those, the Peterborough Research and Development Company Limited, and previously, any major issues that need to take place with respect to the development of these projects require shareholder consent. So previously, the combined authority gave its shareholder consent to the PropCo entering into a new shareholder agreement with CPCA and with ARU around the delivery of what we call the phase 2 aspect of the project. It also agreed in principle the leasing of the building to ARU as well. That authority came with a conditionality, and in discussions over the last year and a half or so since that conditionality was, or that authority was granted with the conditionality, there's now a need to amend that conditionality. So the purpose of this report is to request that the investment committee recommends to the CPCA board that those changes to the conditionality are implemented. And let me explain what the changes to the conditionality are. The shareholder agreement, we have the authority to complete that, and that was on the basis of, when complete, the combined authority investing £3 million in new shares in the company, and the university investing £1.5 million in cash into the company. As discussions have developed, ARU have taken occupancy of the ground floor of the building. So phase 2 is the building which was built, approximately 15,000 square feet of office space, to stimulate a innovation and a research-based organisations and companies to come and locate in Peterborough on that campus. So on the ground floor, ARU have invested in teaching space, but more particularly in the creation of what they call an extended reality centre, which enables students to experience real-life situations that they may be faced with in the profession that they're looking to enter. So, for example, it can create road traffic accidents, and the nursing staff who are being, the nursing students who are being trained at the university can experience that. So there was a considerable investment made in that, alongside that occupancy of the floor. And what ARU are asking is that their investment in that facility, which included the fitting out of the floor as well as the creation of the new asset, be taken into account in respect of their shareholding investment. So instead of £1.5 million in cash going in, they were asking for up to £1.5 million in kind to be recognised, because the original conditionality that was granted was around their investment being in cash. If they had invested cash in PropCo 2, then those funds would have been used to fit out the building. So there's no financial detriment to the PropCo company by agreeing to accept their investment in kind. And their investment in the ground floor building was to an approximate value of 2.1 million. And what we've suggested to them is that the conditionality be changed to reflect an investment by ARU in either 1.5 million in cash or up to 1.5 million in kind. We can justify that on the basis of their expenditure in the ground floor. So that's the first aspect of the conditionality that needs to be changed, to add an in-kind clause as well as an in-cash clause. The second aspect of it, when that consent was given by the CPCA as a shareholder previously, it was also agreed to pursue that the whole building be leased to ARU. What ARU have now asked is if the head lease of the building can be taken in the name of a wholly owned subsidiary of Anglia Ruskin University, which is called Anglia Ruskin Enterprise, and is a company that they use when investing in commercial property transactions. So the recommendation coming to the committee today and coming and hopefully being recommended by the committee to the board is that we amend the conditionality that was previously given to reflect the in-kind investment in shares and the granting of the head lease to Anglia Ruskin Enterprise Limited.
Thank you very much, Jim. So I'm going to come to Councillor Smith now.
Are we in closed session?
We are not. And there is a background, obviously, to some of these decisions, which I am aware it would need to go into a closed session if that was the case. But we can do that. Is that? Okay, so there's, Jim, just to say that there's a recognition that we would like, there's some more questions that might need to be asked here. So I'm going to make a proposal for this. We can go straight into this, but we have to do it in closed session, as opposed to, or we do it at the end. Right. Okay. We are going to move this item now towards the end of the meeting so we can take it in closed session. That's my proposal. I need a seconder. Second it? Yeah, fine. Okay, so we're just going to draw that to a close there for the moment, Jim, and we're going to move on to, which will be item number 9. So hopefully Nathan is here. Oh, hello, Nathan. Oh, nice to see you. It's fine. Have you been there all the time? Gosh. All right. Right, as our project manager, PMO, to introduce the report on the single assurance framework, reporting on major project performance and wider CPA projects dashboard. Thank you.
Yeah, so hi everybody. Those who don't know me, I'm in the Programme Management Office. So this is to note the major projects and programmes performance and risk data. Projects and programmes are classed as most complex and major when it is considered most significant in terms of value, strategic fit, and where there would be a significant impact if there was a failure to deliver. So of the major projects and programmes, 3 are rated green and on target. So this is where there's a high level of confidence in successful delivery. So these are University of Peterborough, Adult Education Provision, and Market Town Master Plans. 2 are amber, where without action, successful delivery may be adversely impacted. So these are Peterborough Station Quarter and Bus Reform Programme. And 1 is rated red, where without action, successful delivery is highly unlikely. And this is Net Zero Programme Home Upgrade Grant 2. So you'll see in Appendix 1 further details on each of these projects and programmes. It also includes what the top risk and mitigations are for each of these. So yeah, happy to take any questions, and we're always open as well to suggestions on reporting in the future that you would like to see come forward, if you would like to see anything on top of what we already present to you today. Thank you.
Thank you, Nathan. Anybody? I mean, these are often projects that we've been on the radar for quite a while, so there's nothing. Okay, Nitin, you're here to ask a question.
So, who decides what to do about the red ones? Who's put the risk analysis there?
So all the data that we collect at the Programme Management Office comes from these service areas themselves. So the rating comes most likely from the project or programme manager and is agreed with the executive director in the service. Then that gets reported to us through highlight reporting, and that gets put into the report that you see today, pulled into that report.
So they're just actions that the teams see relevant to change this, rather than someone looking in to say that you're doing things and need to do them differently. How's that?
I'm going to let Judith, you indicated obviously as this is as the executive director for this particular programme, maybe. Thank you, Nathan. I'll just let Judith come in on this.
Yes, sorry, I couldn't take the mute off. So as the exec director for Place and Connectivity, I oversee the transport, public transport, climate, environment, and the Greater South East Net Zero Hub risks. So as a project team, as a directorate management team, with my assistant directors, we review the risks. And then those risks, so they are graded by those individuals working within their teams, then they're reviewed by me, and then they come up to CMT, where we see them as a group as part of the complex projects review. So there's a number of different stages. So in terms of the red ones, obviously, because they are red, they therefore require a greater degree of intervention from myself. And I'm working with Maxine Narborough, who is the director of the Greater South East Hub, more closely on that to make sure that we are taking the steps that we can. The risks on that particular project are more specific because they are related to the national project risk, because the picture that's playing out in the Greater South East Net Zero Hub is the same as the national picture. In other words, it is underperforming nationally, and our rates are, if anything, slightly better than national rates. But obviously that doesn't take away the fact that it isn't going to perform against its profile, and therefore we are regularly meeting, as you would expect, to manage those risks and see what actions can be taken. But it is highly unlikely now that it will reach its targets, but that is a national picture and is also being reported to the Department for Energy Security and Net Zero, in line with other places who are facing those challenges.
Lucy, do you want to come in?
It's on a different project, so if there are any more on this one, that's...
Oh, okay, we're sticking on this one, the red target. Oh, sorry. God, the doom. Yeah, thank you. No, he's right. That put me off. There's no other questions on that, but over to Lucy, another question.
Great, thank you. My question is actually about the Market Towns Master Plan, which is green. I'm delighted if it's actually green. I just wanted to check that that was a fair reflection of where it is. And whether that green is relating to the plans or the delivery. If all of the delivery is also green, that's very good news. But yeah, just very good news if it is. I just wanted to check.
Nathan, can you? I don't know if you, as you gave us the report. So do you want to?
I can answer the second half of that question. So it's reporting on phase 1 and phase 2. So phase 1 as well as phase 2, which is providing the investment to strengthen the local community. So it's not just about the plans itself, it's about delivery of the plans. Relating to your other query, I'll need to go back to the projects team. Unless there's anybody else in the room who can answer that, I'll have to go back to the project team and come back to you with an answer on that, if that's okay.
Yeah, okay. Steve comes in.
I'm aware of one project which is currently going through a change request, and that may well end up here to this committee soon, which is the Littleport Market Town work. So there may be a decision to make on that, and that's 900,000 from memory. So that's quite a big chunk of the programme. All the other delayed projects have been reprofiled, just tipping into next financial year. But there is a plan and a delivery forecast. So, which is why it's sort of sitting green as an overall programme, even though there's odd ones.
Councillor Nessing, I feel there's more to your question. Do you want more specifics or?
No, I think the answer has answered my question actually, which is that the project is overall green, but not every project is green, and I think that's probably a reasonable assessment, but it's still quite good to have established that that's the position. So thank you.
It's obviously of concern that money was assigned to be used for the communities of Littleport, and it hasn't been used yet. And of course, I guess
now we have different processes, the proposals that would be forthcoming, because we've not, as a combined authority, always had oversight over how the money has been chosen to be spent at different market towns. So I think it means that it will come into more governance and more challenge. Hopefully, whatever's coming forward, you know, is appropriate. Okay, sorry, Councillor Nawaz, and then you, Sam, Councillor Hack.
Yeah, thank you. Peterborough Station Quarter, there was supposed to have been a public engagement on 27th of August. Now, my question is, where exactly does that sit at this moment? And is it likely to slip towards the green or red in the near future? Thank you.
Sure.
Well, that engagement has... oh, no, that's one for Judith, but I know the engagement has been out there. I'm not quite sure when it finishes, but Judith, you can maybe answer that.
Yes, that public engagement has finished. I haven't yet seen the result of that public engagement, but we have an update on that coming to our TIC meeting on the 4th of November. So there will be a kind of full update at that meeting when the results of that, either an update on the results or the verbal report will be given on the update of those results. We're still moving towards a full business case submission early in 2025, and we're working very closely with colleagues at Peterborough City Council to make sure that we're on track to do that. It's a huge capital project with many dimensions and indeed many stakeholders, including Network Rail. And I would suggest that actually if a project of that complexity and that size were anything other than an amber, I would be extremely surprised. So I think it's one that we'll all continue to keep an eye on, myself as Exec Director and all of you as key members of the Combined Authority. So I would expect us all to need to continue to keep a strong eye on that project.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Chair. Thank you for that. I think we all appreciate the enormity, the complexity of the task. As a subsidiary question, what is the current status of the Great Northern Hotel, please?
I don't know if that's a question that you can answer, Judith. I don't think you're...
Briefly.
Okay.
The Great Northern Hotel is actually outside of phase 1 of the Peterborough Station Quarter, but we are continuing to work very closely with Peterborough City Council colleagues to look at the whole redevelopment of the Station Quarter, which of course does involve the hotel. So if there are any proposals in that area, that will come forward through the committee.
Yeah, and I just would like to thank you and your team, Judith, for your continued work with our colleagues at Peterborough City Council in terms of, although we are obviously grateful that this is a big capital project and we're very much going full tilt at it, it doesn't stop there. You know, as a combined authority, the ability now to speak to a government that's listening and is really keen to embrace kind of the opportunity for growing the economy and using combined authorities and the leverage. I have enjoyed lots of conversations with Transport Minister as well as other ministers around the kind of the government table in terms of what we really do see as a much bigger project for the whole of Peterborough, particularly based around the initial investment. I don't, Nick, I don't know if you want to say anything else on behalf of Peterborough City Council.
It's actually going well, Station Quarter. To the complexity of it, it's actually going quite well. The bit around the Great Northern and other bits, watch this space. It's a seed project, the train station and the bit around it, but it's beginning to seed, and things are starting to move in and around on the back of it, and they're under quite significant demands from people like me to make sure then seeds are good ones, not towers.
Back on. Any more questions? Oh, sorry, Sam. Councillor Wakeford, yeah.
Thank you. I don't know how many of my residents in my market towns will be avidly live streaming this meeting, but in case there are any, I do feel moved to comment on the market towns question as well. And I should say, speaking as a cabinet portfolio holder for our market towns work, among various other things in Hunts, I think the master plans exist, and we've called them vision documents in Hunts locally to avoid confusion with sort of master plans in a planning sense, which implies a greater level of fixedness than is the case. They're more sort of project ideas that can be taken up and run with. There's certainly some work underway, not least currently for us most significantly in St Neots and Ramsey, to put into practice elements of the visions, but in no sense is there full funding for every single vision in all of the master plans. And were there unlimited pots of money, I'm sure there'd be appetite for sort of plenty more project ideas in there to be worked up. We'd certainly happily take a share in Hunts, but I think we've just on perhaps the language around this, there's work underway to put elements of the master plans into practice. I wouldn't wish us to be seen to be claiming that we were sort of implementing them all wholesale, because there'd be quite a lot of pushback.
Thank you. Thank you again for officers and those helpful responses to our queries. Nathan, it's good to see you again, even if I didn't see you until the very last minute. We were asked to note the report, which we've done. No vote is required, which then takes us on to item 10, which is the committee's work programme. Do any members have comments on the work programme? No comments. So with that, it means I can move on. But I don't close the meeting. I go into private session, isn't it? All right, I've got to read this out. Sorry, the blurb, as they call it. There you are. Oh, God. You must do all that in one go. That's why you get the legal training, I guess. As mentioned previously, we now need to consider whether to exclude the press and public from this part of the meeting. I move that we resolve that the press and public be excluded from the meeting on the grounds that discussions are at risk of disclosing exempt information to Part 1 of Schedule 12A, the Local Government Act 1972, and that it would not be in the public interest for this information to be disclosed. The public interest in maintaining the exemption must be deemed to outweigh the public interest in its publication. I moved it. We already had a seconder. That was Councillor Singer, so thank you for that. We need to move to the vote. So if you want to move to the vote. Okay, so that's unanimous. At this point, the meeting will be closed and the live stream will end. Members and officers who are taking part in the exempt session can stay in the room. Everyone else present is asked to leave. Thank you. And thank you very much.